All right, thank you all for joining us. No music, no intro, but this still should be a very entertaining, short but to the punch show. Welcome inside the Spreaker.com studios, as alongside Robert Dieters, the commissioner, and the entire national sports broadcast team. I'm your host, Nick Rice. A pleasant and good evening here for the Detroit Lions. Last year, they finished with a subpar performance. They finished 7-9, had a very good start to the year, and looked to be well on their way towards a potential division crown in the NFC North, as the Packers were struggling, but it was just the 5 out of the last 6 games, all of them losses, and the most notable was the 18-16 defeat against the Baltimore Ravens at home, where they had a real good chance to pull away. They had the lead, but it just wasn't meant to be. Following the bye week, actually, they only won one game, and that was against the Green Bay Packers. And Robert, I'm not the biggest fan of maybe a Matthew Stafford. Obviously, their running game isn't exactly something to be noted with. But listen, couldn't be any worse for potentially the greatest receiver in the game is to have maybe the worst coaching staff in the NFL. That's what Jim Schwartz is, in my opinion, one of the worst in the league.
I think Jim Schwartz doesn't really help the squad at all, especially in the offensive side. But Nick, Matthew Stafford has really struggled over his last couple of years, and I don't really see Matthew Stafford being that elite quarterback, and I haven't really seen him really make that jump. Just looking at a couple of the stat lines, you look at his passing statistics. In 2013, he had 29 touchdowns for 19 interceptions. 2012 wasn't really a great year. I guess you could say he really progressed this season, but he had more passing yards. He had 20 touchdowns for 17 interceptions. But Nick, this was the year everyone thought that, this is probably the best quarterback in the game. 2011, 41 touchdowns, 16 interceptions. What happened to that? Well, it's never probably ever going to happen again for Matthew Stafford. That was a one-time thing, and it's never going to come around. But Nick, I got to say, this team, I think Matthew Stafford isn't the quarterback the Lions need. I think that the Lions got to move in a different direction towards that QB spot. But he's not bad for now. I guess give him 2 more years at the spot, and then if he doesn't do well, you're done.
Okay, conspiracy theorist. I mean, Matt Stafford beats half of the quarterbacks in this league. Quarterbacks aren't exactly a commodity, just a normal commodity, I guess you could say. I mean, this is still one of the better quarterbacks in the league, and also when you take a look at the division they play in, I mean, November and December, you're playing in Chicago and Green Bay. It looks like the Lions will take a couple of trips to the East Coast as well, the New England Patriots in Gillette Stadium as well. I mean, every year there are games where you have to have a rocket arm in order to succeed in that kind of cold weather, and Matt Stafford basically has one of the strongest arms in the NFL. I'm not a huge fan of him, but he's not a guy that you exactly can replace, can bring off the street. I mean, did you see the free agent class this year? Are you going to replace a Matt Stafford with a Josh McCown? There's a little bit of a difference there, but then again, when you have Calvin Johnson, when you have yourself a pretty good tight end and pedigree over the years, now Eric Ebron comes into town, and Reggie Bush had a very good season. Don't forget about that. Bush over 1,000 yards rushing during the 2013 campaign. His stat line read the former USC Trojan, now in his 9th season with the Lions, 1,006 yards rushing and 500 yards receiving, and also combined with 7 total touchdowns. You have yourself a great running back and maybe the best receiver in the game, yet Stafford still, the interceptions, too much if you're a Lions fan.
Well, I think his main target, though, you have to say, is a Calvin Johnson. Who else does he throw to? A Nate Burleson and a Kirk Durham? I think that's all you got there, and then you just throw to your running backs, pretty much. And Nick, Matthew Stafford, I think he needs that one more weapon. I think Calvin Johnson, he is arguably the best wide receiver in the game, but Nick, you got to add someone else in that wide receiver core that can maybe produce at least 60, can at least get 60 to 70 receptions for your squad.
Well, the Lions hope that they got that out of both the draft, taking North Carolina star Eric Ebron and former Seattle Seahawk Golden Tate, who they took via free agency. Overall, this is a unit that looks to be relatively the same because they lost a lot of offensive line talent, and hopefully their draft picks they hope will be able to develop into solid starters for them. But listen, Matt Stafford is going to have to pull the load at least a little bit here if the Lions expect to come out on top in the division. I mean, we already just took a look at the Chicago Bears, who we thought finished the year. Both of us, or excuse me, Robert thought 8-8. I thought 9-7. And listen, as the NFL or as the NFC North stands right now, the Packers, with either 10 or 11 wins, are on top of that division. And the Lions are going to really have to make some hay in the NFC North if they want to pull out on top. And Robert, I mean, your thoughts overall on if exactly Detroit can do it?
Detroit, I don't really see them doing it, to be honest with you. I think this is a team that's going to struggle again, but I think their offense is going to be pretty damn solid. And when you have a Golden Tate and a Calvin Johnson, I actually like their wide receiver for, I think, Golden Tate. They brought in the guy that pretty much gets over 60 receptions pretty much almost every season. I think Golden Tate now, when you plug him in, I think he's going to get about 70 receptions to kind of share the load with Calvin Johnson.
Actually, make sure and put on your red flags or whatever brings you basically the most warning, because this is a team ready for a disaster. A Golden Tate, an attitude problem in Seattle. Ndamukong Suh, an attitude problem in Seattle. Do you see the problems here? Nick Fairley, same deal. The Lions have a number of players at the cornerback position who aren't exactly well known. Bill Bentley is your starting cornerback, and Darius Slay, holy cow. But overall, and Rasheed Mathis, I gotta love him. But there are a lot of attitude issues here on this ball club, and also throw in potentially one of the nastiest defensive fronts in all of football, and you got yourself a huge problem there. A lot of talent, but listen, I don't think Jim Schwartz, no matter how old he is, and no matter how many years he's been in this scheme, I really don't think he can come together. I'm going to throw on a real quick fact here. It's not Jim Schwartz. It is Jim Caldwell. And listen, former Colt head coach, I think he's not a guy that can win over a locker room. It's what happened with Indianapolis, and I think it's the same with Detroit.
Nick, we talk about this coaching staff, and Jim Schwartz isn't a bad coach. It's just that when you're in a tough division, it's tough to win games. You're going against Minnesota, who actually has a strong running game. You're going against Green Bay with a great passing game, and you go against Chicago, that is ranked one of the best offenses in the league, and you don't really have a great defense. You're kind of screwed.
Yeah, and even the offense didn't exactly pick up the slack too much there for the Lions. They ranked 18th in the league in rushing the football and fifth in passing, which isn't too bad. But then you mentioned that the passing game or passing defense isn't all that good, and they may have even taken a step back from the 23rd ranking they had a year ago. They were 16th in defense, 6th in offense. You can expect that statistic on the offensive side to stay about the same with the defense. I mean, you even had some playmakers last year to leave. Now, I mean, those starters are no good. Let's go ahead and take a look real quick at the transactions here, because Detroit didn't have all that exciting of a free agent class, but you gotta love some of the draftees. I mean, maybe their best free agent acquisition, and I mean, they are hard to come by here. They just basically signed a lot of their own players, but boy, just not a lot of players here that they took. I do like Von Martin, the defensive end, and that may be the free agent acquisition there for the Lions, but not a whole lot in the free agent department at all.
But Nick, they did something in the draft that you'll be pretty happy about. Eric Ebron. And a lot of people are saying he will fill a Jimmy Graham type of role immediately for the squad. So it's going to be really interesting what this team could do. And the Lions did address the defense in the second round, moving up 5 spots to add BYU linebacker Kyle Van Noy. He's a pass rusher who can play at either of the first 2 levels of the defense, and he'll probably start immediately over Ashley Palmer. I think that's going to be really interesting to watch out for.
Very interesting, but I think he's more of a developmental kind of a player, so don't expect him to do, I guess, a whole lot year one. Am I correct on that?
Wait. Repeat what you just said.
Well, developmental. Is he a guy that can play right away? Is there any reports that you have, I guess, on that?
Nick, I kind of...
Throwing you on the spot here.
Yeah, you're putting me on the spot. I don't really... I'm kind of looking at his bio. It doesn't really say mentally. I know there's a couple bios you can kind of look up. I'm kind of trying to look it up. I really can't find anything. I gotta really read it. But Nick, I think they didn't do too bad in the draft, but you gotta give them a B minus. I mean, they didn't have a bad draft, but they didn't have a great draft either.
Yeah, and then the free agent department, they just signed a lot of their own players. I mean, when you take a look at the best free agent acquisitions, either Vaughn Martin or James Ibadejo. Those are the two players that are potential starters there for the team. The rest of which, maybe Jed Collins, the fullback, but other than that, I mean, they really just acquired a lot of their own because they had a huge salary cap issue. They couldn't exactly go out and spend King's ransom to bring more players to town. Golden Tate, listen, I love the guy, but I'm just not a big fan of what he brings to the table. He's a trash-talking type of a player, and he was appalled when the Seahawks didn't let him become one of the highest-paid receivers in football. I mean, that is out of control. Are you kidding me? This is a selfish dude and somebody who I think is the worst compliment to a Calvin Johnson. I loved what the Lions used to have when they had a Nate Burleson, who I thought was who was a humble and really good player there for the Lions. But maybe I'm just too much into character. Maybe I'm just too much into guys that just do their business like a Russell Wilson and not all the off-the-field stuff. I mean, listen, Golden Tate, for the production that he has, there's no reason he's running his mouth. He's not one of the best, and I think Matt Stafford may struggle a little bit because Golden Tate is just a touch more unreliable than a Nate Burleson.
Golden Tate, he's kind of got that speed, and he can really get to those balls. Yes, I didn't like him in Seattle either, but you're hearing that from a Niners fan, and when you hear it from a Niners fan, you know that it's just like, it's just, voicing your NFC West opinion. Yeah, I didn't like Golden Tate in the league. He did a lot of trash talking, and he really, upsetted a couple Niners fans, but not like a Richard Sherman would. But still, Nick, Golden Tate, I think is going to help out. He's going to help out Calvin Johnson, but maybe it wasn't the great guy to bring into the locker room, is what you're trying to say.
Actually, one thing I do want to add, I mean, we are just hammering this guy, but Golden Tate, he reminds me of a player, David Boston, who went from the Cardinals to the Chargers on a free agent acquisition and became a top 10 worst free agent bust of all time. I mean, overall, Golden Tate is not a guy that you can expect to come in and immediately create a huge impact.
Golden Tate will come in and make a good impact. I mean, they lost Nate Burleson, but Nate Burleson really didn't do that much. I'm kind of glad they cut him. Now he goes to Cleveland, but Golden Tate, I think he's going to bring a lot because, he did have 64 receptions last year, and what I said before was they needed that guy. They got him in the free agency, and really, I think really helped them make an impact. But, Nick, also they lost was Willie Young. Guess where he went to? Chicago. And Chicago's actually taking a lot of the divisional guys. That's really interesting, though.
If you can't beat him, why join? If you can't beat him, might as well join him. Interesting.
I know. After covering this whole division, kind of like, where's everyone going? And we're like, I'm just looking at some of these players, like, you guys are going to Chicago. Like, what the heck's going on here?
Right. Actually, overall, I think the Lions did snag a couple of talented players, mostly in the draft. But a guy that should become at least a cognate there for a couple more years is the quarterback. We're getting to move on here on NFL Team Breakdowns. I want to thank you for joining us here on Spreaker.com. Make sure to tune into more NFL Team Breakdowns throughout the week. It's here towards the nighttime nearly every day as we are getting a move on here with the NFL Team Breakdowns and Starting with the quarterback, about a B plus for me. Matt Stafford, solid guy, not a person that you want to build, I guess, a championship around, but a guy that can win and win pretty often with that kind of arm strength.
I think I'll go with a B. He's kind of that average type of guy. Yes, you can get you some wins here and there, but I think that the year that he had with it was 2011 with 2012, my bad, with the 41 touchdowns. That was the year that really impressed me the most. I just wish that if he had one of those years again, I think that team is pretty bound for the playoffs, but give him a B.
Yeah, sorry, my brain went a little blank there. Yeah, it is a B. But going to the Reggie Bush running back position, Joique Bell as well, about a B for that position. Also look out for Mikel LeSure. He should be very good. I think the free agent acquisition, maybe not of the year, but of a very good caliber player in 2012, Reggie Bush, coming over from the Dolphins, and has been a cognate for one of the better running back positions in the division.
I think Reggie Bush has really become, I think he's become more of a solid running back throughout the season, throughout the last couple of seasons with the Detroit Lions. And coming from Miami, a lot of people didn't expect Reggie Bush to do very well, but I had high expectations for this guy. I think he had 7 touchdowns this season, receiving and rushing, and he had over 1,000 rushing. Not too bad for this guy. A lot of people bash on Reggie Bush, but I think this guy's still a pretty elite type of guy. I give him a B. I really like Bell, too. Bell is just developing every year, and I think he's going to have he had 650 yards rushing. Remember, he had 8 touchdowns, so he was kind of the red zone guy in that running back position.
Fullback, your take on a guy, Jed Collins from the Saints. I give him about a B in that position as well. You talk about players coming over, making an impact. Former Saint Collins should be able to do that as well.
Yeah, I was actually going to say B because when you come from New Orleans, you come from a very strong offensive team. I think Jed Collins will fit right in.
Taking a look at the receivers, sorry, we're going to move on here. Calvin Johnson, Golden Tate, Chris Durham, and Ryan Broyles are the penciled in starting 4. Also, Jeremy Ross, who we'll be talking about on special teams. He's in there as the other wide receiver for them. About a B+, even for the best receiver in the game. You can't do it all, and I don't think that Calvin Johnson can when you got that kind of a backfield behind him.
Oh yeah, I agree with the B+. I think Calvin Johnson still has got to carry this load. I think he's going to get more receptions this year. But it could be an if because if Golden Tate really steps up this year, then Calvin Johnson might not take a lot of the duties for the Detroit Lions. I still think he's going to get over 1,500 yards in receiving this year. That is my prediction for Calvin Johnson.
Calvin Johnson, potentially the best receiver in the game right now. A lot of love going out for him. He's been paid huge dividends taken in the 2007 draft. He should be a great, one of the best Lions of all time, throwing Herman Moore, throwing a lot of other players for the Lions, and he basically is the number 1 of all time. I mean, Calvin, amazing, and should be able to be a little bit better, though, because of an Eric Ebron, who starts at tight end alongside a Brandon Pettigrew. The 1-2 combination for the Lions isn't half bad. I give him a B+ for that position, too.
No, I think Ebron's going to bring a lot. Ebron. I think I really like the name, too. I think it's really stand out to a couple of people. And I think Ebron will. I think he's going to help. I think he's going to help this team. I think this was a good pickup, and especially over Brandon Pettigrew, I think it's going to help them out. I don't think Pettigrew is a great tight end. I mean, he had what was it? Oh, he had 41 receptions for 116 yards. Not too bad, but Ebron bring a lot. It's almost like LeBron, but it's just Ebron.
Yeah, actually, there was a mistake made in the draft where people called him Eric LeBron on accident. Eric LeBron, Ebron. Whoops, sorry about that. Actually, maybe a mistake that won't be the last time people say. This guy is a big man and he can make plays. But also an offensive line that has some speculation going in. Riley Reef, one of the better left tackles, he comes back for the Lions alongside Rob Sims from the Seattle Seahawks. Still is making an impact over there with the Lions. Dominic Raiola. The left side isn't half bad, but then Larry Warford and Adrian Waddle are the penciled-in starters on the right side. And Robert, a lot more questions than the Lions are beckoning for. I give it a B-.
Yeah, I got some questions with that side of the ball. But Nick, remember this O-line only gave up 23 sacks last season. Not too shabby. I'm not too disappointed in that at all. And, Stafford got pressured once in a while, but still that O-line was not too bad. And I'm gonna give him a B- for that O-line.
Their offense rounds out at a B+, and the fact that they ranked 6th in the league and got themselves a penciled-in starter and a Golden Tate isn't half bad alongside Eric Ebron. So we're looking at potentially one of the better offensive units in the league. B+ for them. On the defensive side, much more concern. Ndamukong Suh and Nick Fairley, those are two average to above average players, I believe. Also throw in a Jason Jones from the Seahawks and Ziggy Ansah, the super talented defensive end there for the Lions. He should be a big-time starter for them. Give them about a B+, but I say that with some concern considering the off-the-field issues.
I think Ansah and Suh are going to be the two big guys with Fairley. But, Nick, I'm going to give them a B. I think they're going to be a consistent type of D-line. I don't think these guys are going to have too much problems. I think when you have a Devin Taylor as well, I pretty much like that, so I know not a lot of people talk about him, but he's a guy that will come off the bench. I mean, he had 2.5 sacks last season, so he can get to that quarterback.
Another guy that can get after it is an Ashley Palmer and a Kyle Van Noy. They're part of the linebacking core. Stephen Tulloch is a very solid middle linebacker there from the Titans. Also, DeAndre Levy. Not many people talk about him. He is one of the better linebackers in the league, but I still give this unit nothing more than a B. I think this is a good, solid unit that can make plays. Good days in the office there for them, but not something to be talked about as one of the best, especially with Ashley Palmer. Questions a lot on him.
I'm going to give him a B. We're going to give him a B-. I think we still don't know what Van Noy brings to this table just yet. Remember, he's a rookie, and rookies are kind of as I always say, it's kind of like, are you going to do really well? Are you going to be in the, like what average rookies do, or are you going to be pretty bad? Let's see what Van Noy can do. Give him a B- right now.
All right, this may be potentially one of the worst defensive secondaries in the NFC. The starting players, alongside Rasheem Mathis, there for cornerback, is Bill Bentley, Darius Slay, and Nevin Lawson, the rookie late-round selection that the Lions picked up. Those are the penciled starting four, and to say that this may be a unit that struggles, huge understatement. I give them a C.
I could potentially maybe give the worst rate on the show I maybe have ever have. I'm gonna give them a D+. Man, I think they only get like 2 interceptions in that cornerback crew. I'm not expecting a lot, and they're gonna really struggle especially maybe against the Packers and I think against the Bears. They're really gonna struggle.
Yeah, I'm taking a look right now at the NFL power rankings for the cornerback position here according to Super Bowl Nation. And listen, we know a lot about our squad, but didn't know exactly how much the Lions were expected to struggle, and they rank in the bottom 5 in defensive secondaries. It's just not a very good cornerback tandem, and a bunch of names that we have never heard of. But actually, when you go to the safety position, I like it a little bit more, and I'm going to give them a C+ for this reason. Glover Quinn and James Ibedejo, they are huge players in the secondary, can hit hard against the run. This may be a very good team. Their pass defense wasn't all that good, and I mean, Glover Quinn's not going to help you much in pass support, but against the run, this team should be pretty good with those safeties. C+ for me.
I think something they struggled in last season was just the passing, but I think that's going to be the same case. But I guess in the rushing department, they were 6th overall. Not too bad. I mean, they really stopped the run, and I think that's going to be kind of the same thing going for them again. Glover Quinn isn't really going to help you that much, yeah, as you said, in passing, but he'll help out in the rushing department. I mean, he'll help out against the rush. 57 tackles, had 2 sacks, but he still had 3 interceptions. So we give Glover Quinn that credit. And also the strong safety position, I think, is look pretty solid as well. Nick, I think I'm gonna give this unit I think I'm gonna agree with you, a C+.
Coaching staff, maybe not as good. Right now, your 2014 Detroit Lions sideline includes Jim Caldwell, Joe Lombardi as the offensive coordinator, and Terrell Austin as your defensive coordinator. A C- for me, as it's just not a unit that you can expect to carry a football team, especially in that kind of a division.
I agree with the C-. These guys need to seriously get a different coaching staff and need to figure it out. I thought, to be honest with you, Nick, I thought maybe they would go after maybe Gary Kubiak, but it didn't really happen with the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, that's true, but, I mean, one thing that they need to do, Gary Kubiak, I don't think would allow them to stop a lot of the character problems because that Houston team fell apart as well. I think they needed somebody who you could depend on for stability. Lovie Smith, I think, would be very good for them. Jim Caldwell just looks like a guy that could be pushed around too easily and a guy that doesn't make a whole lot of good decisions. As Jim Caldwell, former Colt, as you take a look at this guy's overall resume, we're going to pull that up here right now. This is just a guy that he's taken a lot of good teams, but he has turned them into average ball clubs. He has really fallen apart. This is a guy that is only 500, 2-2 in the playoffs with some of the best teams of all time. He only played 3 years, or coached for 3 years, and that was with the Colts. He took them from a 14-2 football team, and Robert, in 2 years, turned them into a 2-14 last place team in the AFC South. In just 3 years, 14-2, then 10-6, then 2-14.
Remember, you just know how important Peyton Manning is to that squad.
Absolutely crucial there, but still, you can't expect Jim Caldwell to do a whole lot of good when he has turned not only the Colts but also the Ravens into teams that were going in the wrong direction. As he took the best team in the NFL in 2009. And didn't do a whole lot with them. I'm just not the biggest fan of Caldwell, and also those coordinators aren't all that notable as well. Special teams, same thing. The penciled-in starters are a Jeremy Ross at return, and then your punter, Sam Martin, and place kicker is Giorgio Tavecchio. Interesting.
Nick, I'm going to give him a C. I don't think this squad needs to seriously just develop more. They got to do something right. The Lions, this team seriously gotta progress on their secondary. Secondary is important in this league now. That's what some NFL teams really get. Seattle, man, you gotta give their secondary almost an A. You gotta give them an A. But when you look at Detroit Lions, it's awful. It's scary. But I mean, the safeties aren't bad. It's just the corners. And I get the worst grade on the show at D+. I didn't expect to give that, and I gave it a D+. Pretty surprising.
Well, is it any surprise that the worst cornerback positions, as of which we've covered so far, include the Baltimore Ravens, right? They include, let's take a look here, the Minnesota Vikings, right? Teams that we have placing last in their division. The Cleveland Browns, did they do all that good? Well, they're an average cornerback crew. Joe Hayden definitely boost that. But a lot of the cornerback crews that we have at the bottom are also the teams that we have at the bottom. Will this team place last in the NFC North? How good will they do? Will they come back and win the division? Well, we'll go ahead and cue the music here as we are getting a move on here on NFL team breakdowns. It's a B+ for the offense, B- overall grade for the overall defense, and obviously coaching staff is even worse. So as you take a look at the schedule, it is what we're notorious of here on NFL team breakdowns, the Detroit Lions, and we have a lot of games we predicted already in the books. As Robert predicts to start the year, the Lions go 2-2. They flip-flop wins and losses. Early victory against the Giants, loss against the Panthers. They come back with a win over the Packers and lose on the road against the New York Jets. I think the Lions start 0-2 and come back with 4 straight wins. But in week number 5, Robert, what's your prediction versus the Buffalo Bills?
I think they get the loss here. I think Buffalo had their number, and the last time they played was 2010. They got to win, and guess who the starting quarterback was? It was Fitzpatrick. Interesting thought there, but Nick, I think they get the win. I think you got to give Buffalo a win once in a while, and I think this is going to be their win over Detroit.
Definitely a team that can win early and often. Week 7 against the New Orleans Saints. It is a home game for the Lions, but maybe too little too much. I give the Detroit Lions their first loss in the last 4 games against a really good team.
They got the loss here. The New Orleans Saints are overpowering against this squad. When you're going against Drew Brees, your secondary is not ready to go over. Your secondary will not be ready against Drew Brees, and Drew Brees is probably going to pass, maybe even get 400 yards that game. Detroit.
According to my number, I think the Lions go into the Week 9 bye at 4-4 on the season. Robert thinks they go in at 3-5. Week 10, home against the Dolphins. I give the Lions the win. But what are your thoughts?
They got me giving the win too here. I think one out in a close one in the fourth quarter.
I'm going to rip away all the dramatics here. The Lions, they're 5-4 according to my account, but they don't win another game for the rest of the year. They finish at 5-11. Obviously, I don't know if that'll exactly happen, but I think that Detroit just doesn't have a good coaching staff, and no good coaching staff wins late. No bad coaching staff wins late with regularity. Last year was the case. This year, the same thing. I think Detroit loses their final 7. Meanwhile, Week 12, Robert, what are your thoughts at the New England Patriots for these Detroit Lions?
Yeah, Patriots are gonna get the win. Come on, that's not even you can't even argue that. New England is so overpowering, and they got so much better in the defense. I think this is a team that's gonna make the run this year.
I think it's a loss for me as well, and that means that Robert concludes the season as we're going to end this thing with Robert believes a 6-10 campaign for the Detroit Lions. I think that Detroit goes 5-11. So obviously not a team that is expected to do a whole lot of damage in the NFC North, especially with Green Bay getting a healthy Aaron Rodgers back. Listen, as you take a look at the NFC North, it's our first completed division, first of many that we can expect in the NFC, especially as we are at the halfway point of the team breakdown season. Robert, 11-5 for your Packers before an 8-8 Chicago team places second, and then the Vikings and the Lions rounded out. Both go 6-10 according to your predictions, and that seems to be right around where these teams, as far as talent concerns, where they should end up.
No, it's not a bad record for them. It's just that their defense, they got to really work on that. It's kind of like the Bears, but the Bears really got some big time names in the free agent market. The Lions didn't really want to do squat, and they decided to just do it on the offense. I think they could have saved their money and used it on the defensive side.
Yeah, obviously going to be an interesting finish there for all of these teams, as not only do the Lions have a real tough home slate as of towards the end of the season, but so do the Packers. So it'll be interesting. I think that Green Bay finishes at 10-6 and wins the division by 1 game over the Bears at 9-7. Then the Vikings and the Lions at 5-11. They finish the NFC North at the bottom of the pack, and that would place the Lions into a top 12 drafting slot. again and what to do with potentially the best receiver in the game and a quarterback that isn't too bad, along with Reggie Bush, who can get it done on the offensive end. And it's just that defense that, I don't know what to do.
I think what they're going to finally figure out is they got to really just work hard in the draft, really work hard in the defense, look for at least maybe 2 to 3 big-time free agents, and get some big-time signings. I think that's what the Detroit Lions are going to do, or just keep on rebuilding, keep on getting some great draft picks, get your record up, maybe higher and higher as you go, or kind of stay at the bottom of the pack for a little bit. Then become one of the best potential teams in the next couple of years.
Yeah, well, overall, this would be an interesting type of a finish here for the NFL team breakdowns. We're going to conclude here as, alongside Robert Dieters, I'm your host, Nick Rice. As we have a report, we are going to gone through all the numbers. Robert, can you predict a number between 1 and 32? We're going to end the show by giving you the team that we're going to choose next time.
Let's do number 3.
Yeah, number 3, the team that we're going to choose up next are the Oakland Raiders. So alongside Robert Dieters, I'm your host, Nick Rice. Thank you for joining us. Tune in for the Raiders coming up next. So long.